Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my top 24 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2023 fantasy football season. But before we can go in depth into these top 24 wide receivers, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 24 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2023 fantasy football season. We begin with the S tier wide receivers, beginning at number 1 with Justin Jefferson, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings, current underdog ADP wide receiver 1 at pick 1.1. Last year, he was the wide receiver 1 in PPR and the wide receiver 2 in PPR points per game. He played in all 17 games last season, finishing number 1 in targets with 184, number 1 in receptions with 128, and number 1 in receiving yards with 1,809, which is 106.4 receiving yards per game. The only metric in which he did not finish number 1 in, which is touchdowns, 9 total, number 4 at wide receiver. In terms of efficiency, he was uber efficient last season, 8th in yards per target, 3rd in yards per team pass attempt, and 1st in total route wins. Kirk Cousins obviously isn't the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, 7.5 target accuracy for Justin Jefferson, ranking 35th at wide receiver. Justin Jefferson is in one of the offenses that is going to be throwing the ball at the highest clip in the National Football League. Their defense is bottom of the barrel, complete and utter dog shit, and they're going to be having to throw the ball at an incredibly high rate, game in and game out, especially in those games where they are chasing the other team's offensive point total. Justin Jefferson is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and I know people love to make fun of Kirk Cousins, but ultimately, Kirk Cousins being just about average does not scare me away from what could be another great wide receiver season out of Justin Jefferson, one of the 4 guys, all in the S tier, who I think could finish the year with 2,000 plus receiving yards. At number 2, we have Jamar Chase, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, underdog ADP, wide receiver 2 at pick 2.2. Last year was the wide receiver 11 in PPR, but that is because he missed a couple of games. He was the wide receiver 3 in PPR points per game, playing in 12 games last season, 134 targets, 11.2 per game, number 14, 87 receptions, 7.3 per game, number 12, 1,046 receiving yards, 87.2 per game, number 16, and 9 total touchdowns, number 4 at wide receiver. He was the 10th most dominant wide receiver according to Player Profiler's Dominator rating, which is percentage of team total receiving yards and team receiving touchdowns. I am right now being a little bit cautious with Jamar Chase because of the injury to Joe Burrow. Now, if we fast forward into late August and Joe Burrow appears to be good to go for week number 1, I will take the foot off the gas of my panic mode. Because right now, I am panicking a little bit. It's not Mach 5, it's not threat level midnight, but I'm worried a little bit. But if Joe Burrow is good to go for week number 1, then wheels are up for yet another great season out of one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, Jamar Chase. At number 3, we have Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins, underdog ADP, wide receiver 4 at pick 4.9. I think trying to rank Tyreek and Cooper Kupp, they're just so close in my rankings. If you want to say that Cooper Kupp, who's my number 4 wide receiver, you like him better than Tyreek Hill, I'm not really going to argue with you. Wide receiver 2 in PPR last season, wide receiver 3 in PPR points per game, playing in 17 games last season. He was 3rd in targets with 170, 2nd in receptions with 119. He was 2nd in receiving yards with 1,710, and 4th in total touchdowns with 9. He had a 52.3% route win rate last season, 3rd, 10.1 yards per target, 6th, and 148.7 true catch rate, 2nd at wide receiver. Entering into last year, a lot of people worried about Tyreek Hill, obviously going from one of the best quarterbacks ever in Patrick Mahomes to Tua Tagovailoa made people turn their heads. Tua Tagovailoa last season stepped up in a big way in this Mike McDaniel system. He was the best, or one of the best, deep ball passers in the National Football League. This is an offense that is going to be throwing the ball a ton to Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. Tyreek Hill is a force to be reckoned with. You just dump the ball off 7 yards his way, right? He could do a slant. He could literally be 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage and he could take it to the crib. He took a fumble to the crib last season up against the LA Chargers. Tyreek Hill's value heavily hinges, though, on Tua Tagovailoa. With Tua last year, he played in 12 games. Without Tua, 5 games. With Tua, he averaged 10.1 targets per game. Without Tua, 9.8. Receptions were the same with 7, but the receiving yards and the receiving touchdowns is where it becomes more obvious. With Tua, 104 receiving yards per game. Without Tua, 92. With Tua, 0.6 receiving touchdowns per game. Without Tua, 0. So without Tua, he didn't score a single fucking touchdown. So Tua's health heavily impacts Tyreek Hill. Now, it doesn't impact Tyreek as much as it does with Jaylen Waddle, but obviously if Tyreek Hill was to Hulk smash, become the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football, he would need Tua to be healthy. For that, at number 4, to close out the S tier, we have Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams, underdog ADP, wide receiver 3, at pick 4.1. Last year was the wide receiver 23 in PPR, but he was the wide receiver number 1 in PPR points per game. Obviously, the injury hurt him a ton. 9 games played, 98 targets, 10.9 per game, number 34, 75 receptions, 8.3 per game, number 23, 812 receiving yards, 90.2 per game, number 33, and 7 total touchdowns, 14th at wide receiver. This motherfucker only dropped 1 ball last season, 1 drop. He had a 52.3% dominator rating, 18th in target accuracy, 11th in target separation. I understand that there are some worries about Matthew Stafford, but everything I have seen is pointing towards Matthew Stafford being fully healthy, as is pointing towards Cooper Kupp being fully healthy. This depth chart at the wide receiver position is dog shit. Outside of Cooper Kupp, sure, they have Van Jefferson, they have some other guys, they got Puka, but at the end of the day, none of them can even hold Cooper Kupp's jockstrap. This is a guy that could get 200 plus targets this season, and it wouldn't even be all that crazy if he got 200 targets, right? Last year, Justin Jefferson had 184, Tyreek Hill had 170. Cooper Kupp is the LA Rams offense, and I think that Cooper Kupp could easily be the number 1 wide receiver. I think people are really discrediting him, but I feel like people have started to kind of catch in a little bit more to how great Cooper Kupp is, and I'm no longer seeing him go a lot of the times at like pick 8, 9, or 10. If you can get Cooper Kupp at pick 8, 9, or 10, you should be laughing straight to the fucking bank, because that is an amazing pick there. Moving now to the A tier, we have 2 guys, Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills, underdog ADP, wide receiver 5 at pick 8.1. Stefon Diggs is definitely a step down from those other 4 wide receivers, but Stefon Diggs arguably is as skilled as them. I just kind of worry about the fact that I don't know if Stefon Diggs can get that same crazy amount of volume as those other guys on a per game basis. Wide receiver 4 in PPR, wide receiver 5 in PPR points per game, 17 games played, 155 targets, 9.1 per game, number 5, 110 receptions, 6.5 per game, number 3, 1,455 receiving yards, 85.6 per game, number 5, and 11 total touchdowns, number 2 at wide receiver. The Buffalo Bills offense is going to be pretty similar to last year. Obviously, they bring in Dalton Kincaid, who everyone and a lot of people on Twitter and Bills fans getting down on their knees, giving Dalton Kincaid the gawk 9,000 special, the good old Dick Suckaroo, and they are talking about how they think that Dalton Kincaid is going to be this red zone behemoth. Well, if that is the case, then that does kind of hurt Stefon Diggs in some way if Dalton Kincaid scores 1,000,000 touchdowns, which I don't think he's going to actually do, but, you know, we got to bring that argument up. In terms of efficiency, he was 6th in yards per team pass attempt, or yards per pass attempt. He was 17th in yards per target, 9th in fantasy points per target, and 4th in fantasy points per route run. Stefon Diggs is incredibly safe, right? He's not in the same tier as those other wide receivers. I don't think he's as good as them. He is kind of close to them, and he's on a good offense. He's got a great quarterback, right? I don't think we need to talk too much about Stefon Diggs. I don't think anyone would have an issue with him being ranked as wide receiver number 5. I think that's basically his consensus ranking at this point. At number 6, this is a guy where people start to bring up question marks. Davante Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders, underdog ADP, wide receiver 10 at pick 14.4, wide receiver 3 last year in PPR and 6 in PPR points per game. Last season, he played in all 17 games, 2nd in targets, 7th in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, and 1st in total touchdowns, doing also with the 69th highest, very nice, I like, but not really, it's not very nice, 7 target accuracy, 69th at wide receiver. He was still the 2nd most dominant wide receiver, and he was 5th in total route wins. I get it. Jimmy Garoppolo, while the guy is sexy, he's the sexiest quarterback in the NFL, really, but he's not the best quarterback in the NFL. He is far from it. But Jimmy Garoppolo has proven to us that he can throw the ball to one guy. And he is going to force feed the ball down the throat of Davante Adams. Adams is going to be the throat goat like his name was Tiana Trump. I am all in on Davante Adams this season. I think everyone and their mother is overthinking this. Why the fuck is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL coming off the board as the wide receiver 10? Despite with Derek Carr last year and Jarrett Stidham, he was the wide receiver 3 in PPR and 6 in PPR points per game. I know Jimmy Garoppolo isn't amazing, but Jimmy Garoppolo is not dead in the water compared to Derek Carr. He's just not. So I am still very much in on Davante Adams. Moving to the B tier wide receivers 7, 8, and 9 at 7. We begin with the first of 2 NFC East receivers in this tier. CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys, underdog ADP wide receiver 7 at pick 11.3. He was the wide receiver 5 in PPR and the wide receiver 7 in PPR points per game. Remember last season, Dak Prescott did not play every single game. We saw a bunch of Cooper Rush early on in the season. 17 games played for the Lamster CeeDee Lamb, 156 targets, 9.2 per game, number 4, 107 receptions, number 4. He was 6th in receiving yards and 4th in total touchdowns, 8th in route win rate, 7th in dominator rating, and 8th in juke rate. CeeDee Lamb has gotten better every single year he has been in the NFL. This is a Dallas Cowboys offense. Sure, they lose Kellen Moore, but I expect this offense to be just as good, if not maybe even better. Again, CeeDee Lamb has gotten better every year, and Dak Prescott being healthy going into the season, Dak Prescott hopefully playing the whole season. I know it's easy to beat up on Dak, right? Dak can't win in the playoffs, this, that, the other thing. I love talking about that. It's fun to fucking debate about the Cowboys, right? You feel like Skip Bayless talking about the Cowboys, right? But at the end of the day, this is about the regular season. The fantasy football season is not played in the playoffs. This is a team that is going to be one of the best teams, might be the best team in the NFC during the regular season. This is a team that is going to score a shit ton of points, and CeeDee Lamb is the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. Clearly, Nick, you like Brandon Cooks. I do. But it's very easy to acknowledge that you can like Brandon Cooks while also understanding that CeeDee Lamb is by far and away the clear alpha wide receiver in this offense, one of the better receivers in the NFL, and an extremely safe pick at the end of the first round or in the early second round. But I want to note that I did have a bit of a battle in my brain, the devil versus the angel on my shoulder, trying to move up Amon-Ra St. Brown. I kind of wanted to put Amon-Ra at wide receiver 7, but I've stuck him still at wide receiver 9. At number 8, we got the other NFC East receiver, A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles, underdog ADP wide receiver 6 at pick 9.6. Wide receiver 6 in PPR last year and 8 in PPR points per game. Last year, for some fucking reason, every single fantasy analyst, myself included, basically every single one, there's probably people who were super high on A.J. Brown, did what is, I will call, mental gymnastics, mental warfare in their brain. We tried to talk ourselves out of a guy that was dumping on defenses, taking shits on their chest in Tennessee. We thought, because he's going to Philly, he shouldn't be a first or second round pick. We thought that maybe he would regress. Well, that was completely wrong, because this was one of the best offenses in the National Football League. Jalen Hurts increased greatly as a passer, and I think he's going to get better as a passer, and A.J. Brown's the number 1 wide receiver with the upside to score 1 million touchdowns in any given game. Now, I don't remember who it was against off the top of my head. I think it's the Steelers, but it might not have been. You remember that game, though, last year, where A.J. Brown was scoring touchdowns. He was fucking waving at the DBs. They couldn't stop him. He was unstoppable. NBA Jam on fire style, right? 8th in targets, 11th in receptions, 4th in receiving yards, 2nd in total touchdowns, 2nd in yards per route run, 4th in yards per target, 5th in yards per reception. I know there's always the narrative, Jalen Hurts is running back, Jalen Hurts is this, that, the other thing. Jalen Hurts is a legitimately good passer. The Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is a brick fucking wall, a brick shithouse. A.J. Brown should have zero struggle in this offense. Again, another incredibly safe pick. All of these early wide receivers feel incredibly safe. I don't feel like there's many holes to throw in any of them. As you get deeper down in the rankings, though, obviously, there are more warts in their profiles. At number 9, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown, ARSB, of the Detroit Lions, underdog ADP wide receiver 7 at pick 11.3. He was the wide receiver 7 in PPR last season and the wide receiver 11 in PPR points per game. He played in 16 games last season, totaling 146 targets, 8th at wide receiver, 5th in receptions, 10th in receiving yards, and 20th in receiving touchdowns. Total touchdowns, I think that number will go up, going from 6 total touchdowns, 20th. I think he could easily get to the 10 total touchdown number. And even if he doesn't, if he just scores like 5, 6, 7 touchdowns, with the amount of volume he gets in an offense that I project to be really good, I think Jared Goff is another quarterback that's pretty underrated. The volume is clearly going to be there for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Their defense is still pretty so they're going to have to be throwing the ball at a really high rate. 8th in target accuracy last year, again, to kind of just further exemplify that Jared Goff is a little bit better than people give him credit for. 9th at wide receiver, 24th in dominator rating, 15th in true catch rate. Again, this offense really shocked people last year with how good they were. I think this offense is going to shock people even more when they are, once again, an amazing offense in the National Football League. I understand that they bring in Denzel Mims. They don't have Jameson Williams for the first 6 games, though, so I really think the first 6 weeks, Amon-Ra could get 12 or 13 targets every single game. When JMO comes back, that number will retract a little bit, like your cock into your body when it's a little bit cold. But ultimately, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is in for a very good season. Again, a very safe pick. Moving now to the C tier at the wide receiver position with wide receivers 10 and 11. We have number 10, Jaylen waddled away, waddle till the very next day of the Miami Dolphins, underdog ADP wide receiver 11 at pick 16.9. If you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. Wide receiver 8 in PPR and 13 in PPR points per game. He played in 17 games last season, having 116 targets, 6.8 per game, number 24, 75 receptions, 4.4 per game, number 23, 1,356 receiving yards, 79.8 per game, number 7, and 8 total touchdowns, number 11 at the wide receiver position. In terms of efficiency stats, Jaylen Waddle was uber efficient, incredibly efficient. It's shocking how efficient he was, and he is the number 2 wide receiver on his team. It's kind of 1A, 1B, though, in my opinion. Obviously, Tyreek the 1A, Waddle the 1B. First in yards per target, first in yards per reception, third in fantasy points per target, and 10th in route win rate. Jaylen Waddle runs these crispy routes. He has the speed of fucking Jordan Addison driving a car. Jaylen Waddle is that guy, and the Dolphins offense is going to be great. Again, though, he's hinged to Tua. Now, I think Magic Mike White will be better than what we got out of Teddy Bridgewater or what we got out of Skylar Thompson last season. But again, it's very clear if Waddle is to reach this peak, climb Mount fucking Everest metaphorically, you're going to need Tua. 7.3 targets per game with Tua, 5.8 without, 4.7 receptions per game, 3.8 without, 89.1 with Tua receiving yards, 57.4 without, 0.7 receiving touchdowns per game with Tua, 0 without. So again, he'll be fine if Tua gets hurt, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, but if Tua's healthy, that is where the true fucking ascension to greatness comes for Jaylen Waddle. And then, again, don't root for injuries. I don't root for injuries. I'm a Dolphins fan. I don't want them to get hurt. If Tyreek Hill gets hurt, knock on wood, then Jaylen Waddle might be on a rocket ship through the moon. Not to the moon, through the fucking moon. Moving to wide receiver number 11, another wide receiver in the AFC Beast, the AFC East, besides the Patriots, those fucking bums. Garrett Wilson of the Jets, underdog ADP wide receiver 8 at pick 13.2. But before we could break that down, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play best ball fantasy football this summer. If you don't know what best ball is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft, and that's it. There's no waivers, there's no in-season management, you don't edit your lineup, and there are no trades. At the end of every single week, Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup for you. Again, the drafts are the most fun part for me of fantasy football. Now you can do a zillion drafts and not have to worry about editing the actual lineup. They have the biggest fantasy football contest ever. $25 to enter, 150 max entries, the Best Ball Mania 4. $3 million to first, $15 million in total prizes. If you don't want to join a big tournament like that, there are going to be other tournaments that are smaller, like the Puppy, or the Pomeranian, the Poodle, $3, $5, $7 entry fees that will release throughout August and maybe even early September. And if you don't want to do that either, you're like not a tournament guy or gal, that's fine, because they also have things that are much like a fantasy league. You versus 11 other people with as low of a buy-in as $3. The first 2 places make money. If this sounds fun to you, you want to get into this, make sure you use promo code Notorious for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. You deposit 100, you get an additional 150, additional 50, 25, additional 25, or you can click on the link in the video description. So back on into things. Wide receiver 11, Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets, underdog ADP, wide receiver 8, pick 13.2. Wide receiver 21, can you do something for me? In PPR, and wide receiver 31 in PPR points per game, 147 targets, 8.6 per game, number 6 at wide receiver, 83 receptions, 4.9 per game, number 16, 1,103 receiving yards, 64.9 per game, number 14, 4 total touchdowns, 37th. Garrett Wilson was getting pummeled, pounded out the ass by the quarterback position in New York, right? Zach Wilson. Terrible. Now the backup. Joe Flacco, not elite anymore, and Mike White. And yet, Garrett Wilson, still pretty good. 19th in route wins, but again, 90th in target accuracy. So if the targets are just in the same fucking stratosphere as Garrett Wilson, you expect him to be the clear number one guy because the other weapons on that team, Alan Lazard, McCole Hardman, fucking the corpse of Randall Cobb, it's weekends at Bernie's. Who cares? There's not anyone compared to Garrett Wilson. I don't think Rodgers is the same Rodgers that won MVP back-to-back years, but he doesn't have to be. He just has to be not dog shit for Garrett Wilson to be really good. I've considered moving Wilson above Waddle. I just feel a little bit more safe with Jaylen waddled away, waddle, till the very next day. Moving now to the D-tier wide receivers. Wide receivers 12 through 15. At number 12, we got T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals, underdog ADP wide receiver 14 at pick 24.6. When we are talking about consistency at wide receiver, T. Higgins should be the poster boy for that. Every single week, without fail, even with Jamar Chase in the offense, Higgins just prints wide receiver 10, 11, 12, 13, or 14, 15. 10 through 15 every single week. Wide receiver 10 through 15. Without fail. Wide receiver 19 in PPR, 20 in PPR points per game. Now, I get it. The upside of Higgins isn't as high as some of these other guys, right? Like, if Ridley smashes, Ridley could be a top 5 receiver. Higgins might need an injury for that to happen to Jamar Chase. But the safety is there. Very safe. And if something was to happen to Jamar Chase, the upside is immense. Wide receiver 19 in PPR, 20 in PPR points per game, 16 games played last year, 26th in targets, 111, 23rd in receptions with 75, 17th in receiving yards with 1,042, 14th in total touchdowns with 7. Joe Shiesty, obviously very accurate, 11th target accuracy, 16th in yards per target, 30th in yards per reception. Again, I am not panicking yet. I am not fucking DEFCON 5 mode on Joe Shiesty, on Joe Burrow. Well, let's be honest. Just the start of August. As we get deeper and deeper and deeper, and we start to realize, hey, maybe Joe Burrow might not be good for week 1, or maybe Joe Burrow's going to miss some time. Then you fucking hit the emergency button on the desk, right? You start to panic. Right now, I'm not panicking. But I know as we get deeper and deeper in, the panic will start to come if Joe Shiesty is fully healthy. At number 13, we got DeVonta Smith of the Eagles. Underdog ADP, wide receiver 13, pick 22.2. Wide receiver 9 in PPR, 14 in PPR points per game, tied with Mike Evans. 17 games played, 13 in targets, 9th in receptions, 8th in receiving yards, 14th in total touchdowns with 7. 20th most dominant wide receiver, 3rd in juke rate. This was a guy that was destined for greatness in the NFL after he won the Heisman, despite the fact that he's built like Kevin Durant or built like a fucking wet piece of paper. He's as skinny as it gets. This guy's amazing at the NFL level. Again, an amazing offense. His ceiling is capped for season finish by A.J. Brown. But on a weekly basis, he can outscore A.J. Brown. It would be shocking if they both played all 17 games if A.J. Brown, or if DeVonta Smith was able to outscore A.J. Brown, in my opinion. Again, this is a great offense, loaded offense, great offensive line, great quarterback. There's not too much you have to say about DeVonta Smith. The guy's just fucking incredible. Number 14, we got Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints, underdog ADP, wide receiver 12, pick 19.6. Wide receiver 25 in PPR and 27 in PPR points per game. He played in 15 games last season with 9 starts again. This is his rookie year, 48.1% route win rate, 12th, and he was 18th in fantasy points per route run. He had 20th in targets with 119, 72 receptions, 26th, 1,042 receiving yards, 17th, and he scored 4 total touchdowns, 37th. I worry about Olave and why I don't have him ranked higher. I've talked about this a ton, and there's going to be people that disagree with me. I fully understand that. But I think if Michael Thomas plays, say, 12 games, then the upside of Chris Olave has been buried out back, right? Because if Chris Olave is to smash, it means that Derek Carr is throwing him rock a bunch. But if Michael Thomas is healthy, you already know Slant Man himself is going to command a boatload of targets. Now, Olave could still be a great receiver, right? He could still be a top 24 guy, a guy that you rely on weekly with Michael Thomas. But hitting the nuts, hitting the peak, hitting that season where it's like, thank God I drafted Chris Olave. You needed Olave to win. This, that, and the other thing. If you found Olave, hidden gem, right? Because I know underdog, he's wide receiver 12, pick 19.6. He goes in like the 3rd round of a lot of redraft drafts, or the end of the 2nd. So I get the the kind of payment you're not overpaying for Chris Olave where you're getting him, right? It's a pretty fair price. But if he's not the guy, I don't really think he finishes. Like, if Michael Thomas plays the whole season, I don't think Olave finishes as the wide receiver 12. At number 15, we got Calvin Ridley. He's new to the D tier. We bumped him up. I'm all aboard the Calvin Ridley fucking hype train. I am the commander of the Calvin Ridley hype train. I've been banging the drum all offseason long for Calvin Ridley. Wide receiver 16 off the board on Underdog, pick 29.4. His last season was 2021, but he only played in 5 games, so kind of throw that out. I look back to 2020 for a closer representation of what could happen. Now, this is a season with Julio Jones on the Falcons and Calvin Ridley. Ridley was the wide receiver 5 in PPR and 4 in PPR points per game. Played in 15 games. He had 143 targets, 7th at wide receiver, 90 receptions, 11th, 1,374 receiving yards, 4th, 9 total touchdowns, 9th, 7th in yards per route run, 9th in fantasy points per route run, 21st in target separation, 3rd in drops. He had a case of the dropsies. He turned into fucking Derrick Henry or Deontay Johnson. But hey, I'm not panicking about that. Calvin Ridley is a great receiver. He is now on an offense that stepped up in a big way last year. Trevor Lawrence has pushed himself into being the quarterback that people thought he would be coming out of Clemson. They got Doug Peterson. Calvin Ridley is now, in my opinion, the number 1 receiver. I get it. People like Christian Kirk, but Christian Kirk, in terms of skill, cannot even hold the jock strap of Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is one of the best receivers in the NFL. The risk that you are taking with him, I get there is certain risk, right? People say, Nick, he's going to be rusty. Nick, it might take a couple of games for him to get his feet wet for him to be really good. I get that. I don't think so, though. I've watched the training camp clips. He's silky smooth. He's moving like never fucking left. Number 1 receiver on the Jags. An offense I project to be really good. Again, another guy. Don't overthink the talent. Don't overthink things. Calvin Ridley. Moving now to the E tier with number 16. This guy moved down slightly to move up Calvin Ridley. Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. Underdog ADP wide receiver 17. Pick 33.5. Wide receiver 10 in PPR. 18 in PPR points per game. The only real clip I saw out of the Cleveland Browns training camp so far, I don't know why I just fucking had a brain fart right there, was a fight between, like, Watson throws the ball, I think it was picked off, and fucking punches start being thrown. Like, okay. I think Amari Cooper is I just thought it was funny, so if you haven't seen that clip, watch it. Cooper is the wide receiver 1. I know people like Elijah Moore. Cooper's the number 1. Watson looked like ass last year. He looked terrible. It was like, wow, did the Cleveland Browns mess up? This isn't just a slight mess up, right? When you forget to, in elementary school, put the period at the end of the sentence, like, slap on the wrist, gotta put the period there, circle it in red fucking marker, right? Put the period there. No, this was like, you fucking forgot to do the test. You're not graduating, right? This was a full-on panic. Sean Watson literally looked like Stevie Wonder out there. He looked like he couldn't see. He was throwing the ball to no one. Throwing the ball to fucking Manti Te'o's girlfriend. But I don't think that's the Watson we get this year. Wide receiver 10 in PPR for Cooper last year, 18 in PPR points per game. Again, this is with a bad Watson and Jacoby Brissett, who was shockingly good. Played in 17 games last season. 16th in targets, 18th in receptions, 11th in receiving yards, 4th in touchdowns. He had 870 unrealized air yards, 3rd at wide receiver. Unrealized air yards is important here because that means that the quarterback play wasn't really there. I'm not saying that you're going to add 1,160 receiving yards plus 870 unrealized air yards, right? You don't do that. That would be asinine to think that Amari Cooper is going to get 2,000 fucking yards. But he's going to be the number 1 receiver on an offense with a quarterback that I expect to play better than last season. He was the 3rd most dominant, 50 Shades of Grey style, wide receiver last season. I love Amari Cooper. I always have. Now I know he hasn't had the best career. Like on the Raiders, he was always kind of this hyped up fantasy guy. Never really hit that, right? In Dallas, good. Cleveland, really good last year. But again, quarterback, weighed him down. Weighed him down like it wasn't the best. But hey, I truly believe Watson is going to bounce back. If you are against Watson, I mean, I don't think a lot of people like Watson, but if you think his skill, right? You think Watson is washed. You think Watson is finished. Fucking Mortal Kombat style. Then sure, fade Amari Cooper. But fade at your own risk. Because if, and I don't think this is a big ask, I think this is very easy to happen. If Watson just doesn't suck ass. And he's maybe not the MVP Deshaun Watson, but he's good. Amari Cooper has that top 12 upside, that top 8 upside, to where he was a genius pick at wide receiver 17. Now moving to the wide receiver 17 to close out the E tier, Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers, underdog ADP, wide receiver 21 at pick 41 point. Now I know there's not a lot of love for Jordan Love, right? People are a little nervous. They're a little bit, oh man, Christian Watson was good last year, right? He was the wide receiver 8 in PPR points per game when playing over 60+% of snaps, which is 7 games. But Jordan Love's gonna fucking suck ass, right? Jordan Love's gonna ruin Christian Watson. Well, and I kind of sound like Mickey Mouse right now. Oh boy. 7.4 target accuracy last season, 41st. So again, this wasn't prime Rodgers. This wasn't like the best play we've ever seen of Rodgers. Rodgers wasn't terrible though, but he wasn't what we thought. And Watson was still pretty solid. 65 targets, 65th, 41 receptions, 64th, 611 receiving yards, 52nd, and 9 total touchdowns, 4th. But he was 7th in true catch rate. Again, wide receiver 8 in PPR points per game when playing 60+% of the snaps. You look at Jaden Reed, you look at Romeo Doubs, you look at the receivers they have. Again, I like Romeo Doubs, I like Jaden Reed at cost. But when you draft them, they're not becoming the number 1 receiver. They're just not. They're not leaping up fucking Mario style, hitting the block, right? They're not leaping past Christian Watson. They're not. Watson has proved last year that he is that guy. Again, I know there's risk, right? There's the risk that Jordan Love, awful. Terrible, like fucking Deshaun Watson last year. But there's also a chance that Jordan Love is just okay, right? There's a chance that maybe he's not the Aaron Rodgers they hit on, right? Or when they traded for Brett Favre from Atlanta, that guy, right? Maybe it's not this reign of fucking greatness at the quarterback position for the next 10 years from Jordan Love, but maybe he's just mid. Maybe he's like discount fucking Kirk Cousins. And if that's the case, then you're going to be very happy with drafting Christian Watson. So, again, another guy with the skills there. People are just kind of overthinking things with the quarterback position. Moving now to the F tier. Got Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins. Wanted to move DeAndre Hopkins even higher, but I will note that DeAndre Hopkins' offensive line kind of sucks. And that could be what stops him from reaching the peak that I think he could get. But I think wide receiver 19 is a fair ranking for him. So number 18, Keenan Allen, LA Chargers, underdog ADP, wide receiver 19, pick 35.8. If you guys haven't ended up enjoying thus far, you have to have by now, right? If you're watching 30 plus minutes into a video and you hate it, why the fuck are you still watching? Right? Why are you still watching the video? Make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button if you have enjoyed. So wide receiver 41 in PPR, 12 in PPR points per game. 10 games played in 2022. 89 targets, 66 receptions, 752 receiving yards, 4 total touchdowns, all outside the top 32. Not a great season for Keenan Allen on paper, but he only played 10 games. I know, people say, Nick, Keenan Allen is injury prone. Well, if you actually look at the games played, right? From 2021 to 2016, or 2017 actually, he only had 2 seasons where he didn't play, besides 2022, all 16 games. In 2018, 15 games, 2020, 14 games. I know before that, 2016, he only played 1 game, 2015, only 8 games, but that's a long time ago. Keenan Allen isn't this injury-prone, fucking super worry every single week that people think he is. He's just not. He was still efficient last year despite him getting older. He is one of the best route runners in the NFL. 8th in target separation, 11th in fantasy points per route run, 19th in true catch rate, 19th in rating per target. I know that people are worried because Quentin Johnston's there. Maybe it's going to hit Keenan Allen and Mike Williams like a fucking truck, right? Run him over, fucking kick to the dome, Justin Gaethje style. Maybe that is, or flying knee like Derek Lewis, right? But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Keenan Allen's going to be just fine, right? I think if QJ is going to sink someone's value, it's going to be Mike Dubb. It's not going to be Keenan Allen. Again, I like making fun of Justin Herbert, the pervert, on Twitter. Oh, he choked in the playoffs against the Jaguars. Sucks, right? That doesn't matter during the regular season. Keenan Allen is a force to be reckoned with. He's still a great receiver. And wide receiver 19 is just laughable for his ADP. If he stays healthy, he's going to finish way ahead of that. 19, D-Hop, Tennessee Titans, underdog ADP, wide receiver 24, pick 44.9. Wide receiver 10 in PPR points per game last year in Arizona. Wide receiver 47 in PPR. Finish on the year. 9 games played in 2022. 96 targets in 9 games. 10.7 per game, number 35. 64 receptions, 7.1 per game, number 34. 41 in receiving yards, 50th in total touchdowns. He was 4th in route win rate. Win rate versus man, 2nd and 6th in dominator rating. Again, I don't expect the Titans to be this prolific offense, and I understand the offensive line might suck. But Tannehill is being drugged through them. He is being shat upon by the at-large fantasy football community. Now again, I don't think Ryan Tannehill is fucking Joe Montana or something, but I think he's good enough for DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins can catch a ball thrown by you or me, right? He has the catch radius of fucking 3 football fields. He's going to catch it if it's thrown near him. Again, there are certain guys that people just overthink. Think, oh, D-Hop's getting a little bit older. The Tennessee Titans are where wide receivers go to die, right? Well, Nick, I drafted Julio a couple years ago in Tennessee, and he sucked. A lot different. I don't think D-Hop has shown any sign of regret. Julio kind of has, right? Kind of new. Hey, Julio might not be the best pick in Tennessee. With DeAndre Hopkins, it feels like he hasn't really lost much of a step. Your ranking, again, you can argue that DeAndre Hopkins is a top 8, top 5 receiver in the NFL in terms of skill. And you're giving him to me at wide receiver 24. Not rocket science. DeAndre Hopkins. Again, the offensive line might suck. Tannehill actually pretty good under pressure. So I'm not super worried. Derrick Henry is going to take up a lot of the defense's attention as well. D-Hop's going to be a red zone threat, could score 10-plus receiving touchdowns. Again, I'm not saying he's going to, but he could. That's the top, the bull theory. Is the bull case for DeAndre Hopkins, right? His peak, right? What he could do, the bull. Peak. Good case for him. Now again, saying he's scoring 10 touchdowns, but I think it is in the realm of possibilities. Moving now to the G tier. Like a G6. Nah. I'm feeling so fly. Like DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. Underdog ADP wide receiver 15 and pick 28.3. There are 2 receivers that I have ranked much lower than where Underdog has them, as well as every other website. I don't like DK Metcalf because of the situation. Now, I like DK Metcalf, the player. DK Metcalf has one of the funniest highlights of all time, and it's not even him on offense. It was him on offense, but him chasing down that guy on the Cardinals. Fucking running at the speed of light. Tackle the man. Very funny video. The guy's fast. Built like an Adonis. And he's amazing at playing wide receiver. But, this is a big but. Shout out to Kim Kardashian. Situation is loaded in Seattle. There's a lot of talent. Wide receiver 16 PPR last year, 26 in PPR points per game with just Lockett. Now you enter Jackson Smith-Njigba. Someone who the NFL community, the NFL draft community, got on their knees and hit him with the gawk special. This is a receiver that is, in most people's opinion, my opinion included, the number 1 wide receiver in the 2023 NFL draft. He has been inserted into this offense. They have Lockett in my pocket. Skirt, Metcalf, JSN. They also have Noah Fant. They also have Zach Charbonnet, who's going to command targets. They have Kenneth Walker, who hurt his groin. Who knows how serious that'll be. But they have other weapons to give the ball to. There's a lot of cooks in the metaphorical kitchen of the Seattle Seahawks. Again, he was the wide receiver 26 in points per game with just Lockett. I have been someone that likes Geno in fantasy football. But I will tell you, I don't think Geno's really that good. I just think he's in a situation where he would have to be literally Dick Cheese to be awful. And I thought he was going to be. So he's better than I would have originally thought. But I still don't think he's great. 17 games played in 2022 for Mr. Metcalf. 141 targets, 11th at wide receiver. 90 receptions, 10th. 1,048 receiving yards, 15th. 6 total touchdowns, 20th. 8th in total route wins. 17th in route win rate. 2nd in drops. He had a case of the dropsies. I just bring it up. It's not super important, but just something to note. Again, could Metcalf have multiple weeks where he scores 30-plus fantasy points? 100%. It's going to be a Seattle Seahawks offense that is potent. This is a Seattle Seahawks offense that is going to score a load of points. But the problem lies with so many options. If Lockett gets hurt, if Jaylen gets hurt, deals could be up for Metcalf. But at wide receiver fucking 15, in a loaded offense, it doesn't make sense. It does not add up to me. I can't talk myself into it right now with everyone healthy. I just can't. Just doesn't make any fucking sense. He was the wide receiver 26. And I'm sorry if I'm just yelling. I sound like Skip debating fucking Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp versus Skip, right? I'm just yelling. Why you yelling, Nick Ercolano? I'm not trying to yell. It just confuses me. I have to really understand. He was the wide receiver 16 PPR, but we're ranking him higher. Wide receiver 15. He was 26th in points per game, and he's the wide receiver 15. Doesn't add up. I'm not great at math, but this doesn't add up. Wide receiver 21. Deebo Samuel, the 49ers. Wide receiver 18, pick 33.9. I'm going to keep this short and simple. Okay, wide receiver 37 in PPR, 28 PPR points per game last year, tied with Hollywood Brown. Now, I get it. Big cock Brock Purdy. I think he's pretty good. 13 games played for Deebo, 37th in targets, 47th in receptions, 49th in receiving yards, 29th in total touchdowns. In terms of efficiency, not efficient. 82nd in route win rate, 75th in target separation, 88th in true catch rate. Why was Deebo so good in 2021, Nick? What made him so special? The fact that he scored 1 million touchdowns, 6 receiving touchdowns, and 8 rushing touchdowns, which is, quick maths, 14th. Or 14 total touchdowns. 2022, he had 5 touchdowns. 3 rushing, 2 receiving. So he scored almost triple the amount of touchdowns in 2021 as he did in 2022. Now, why is that, Nick? Has Deebo been a guy that was a touchdown monster his whole career? No. Just 2021. Now, I'm not ripping on Deebo, saying that Deebo sucks ass, saying that Deebo isn't good, saying that Deebo can't be good. I 100% think Deebo. But the touchdowns and the rushing numbers are not going to be there because they have this guy named Christian McCaffrey. The best running back in the NFL. Run the ball, catch the ball. So why is Deebo going to get carries on the goal line? He's not. Spoiler alert, he's not going to get many. Again, Deebo's this great receiver, but they have Ayuk. They have Kittle. They have McCaffrey. Again, I like Big Cock Brock. I love Brock Purdy. It's a fun story. For a relevant, potential NFL legend. Now, he's already a legend in my book for just being that great in 1 year for where he was picked, but maybe a great second year as well. Again, I like the Niners offense. I love Kyle Shanahan. It's going to be a great team. But how can I talk myself into Deebo Samuel when I don't think he's going to score 1 million touchdowns? I think Ayuk's going to step up and be a little bit better. And if Kittle stays healthy and McCaffrey, there's even more reason to just kind of fade away from Deebo. Now, moving to the H tier, the final wide receivers in my top 20 foe. Again, if you have enjoyed this far, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos, underdog ADP, wide receiver 20, pick 39. He was the wide receiver 22 in PPR, and the wide receiver 21 in PPR points per game, tied with Mike Williams. 15 games played in 2022, 32nd in targets, 30th in receptions, 22nd in receiving yards, and 20th in total touchdowns. He was 11th in dominator rating, 13th in QB rating per target, 19th in fantasy points per out run, and 13th in fantasy points per target. I was shocked that the quarterback rating was so high when targeting Jerry Jeudy because Russell Wilson looked like I don't even know. There's nothing nice you can say about Wilson last year. Wilson was getting ready to cook up, Russ cooks. Let Russ cook up a 5-star Michelin meal like Gordon Ramsay. In reality, he cooked you some gas station fucking sushi. That's what he did. But still, Jerry Jeudy, yep. Towards the end of the season, start to see the light, the end of the tunnel. You start to see, hey, maybe things will go well. Now, the bet you're taking on Jerry Jeudy right now, that he will be better than last year, and you are betting that the Broncos are going to take a huge lead, right? For Jerry Jeudy, again, it's something I talk about a lot. When I'm drafting a wide receiver at wide receiver 22, I have some thoughts in the back of my mind that they could be top 12. I'm not saying Jerry Jeudy is destined to be top 12. I'm thinking he could be. Because why would I draft them so highly if I didn't think they could do that? Again, I know I just shot down the throat of Deebo and DK Metcalf. There's a way they become top 12 receivers. There's a way Jeudy does as well. Russell Wilson steps up. Sean Payton alters this offense completely. And Jerry Jeudy is amazing. Again, 32nd in targets, 30th in receptions, 22nd in receiving yards, and 20th in total touchdowns. So although at the end of last season, he was a lot better. This is a guy that was highly touted out of college. He has yet to put up the consistency at the NFL level for me to say that I'm fully confident in Jerry Jeudy. But what I will tell you is I am confident in Sean Payton, and I'm confident that Russell Wilson isn't some fucking dead-in-the-water quarterback. I was all over Russell Wilson last year. I was fucking banging the drum for Russell Wilson. I was ecstatic. Everyone was ecstatic. The Denver Broncos were at every primetime game. They played against the Colts. I don't even think they scored fucking 14 combined points. That game was a disaster. It went to double overtime or overtime. I don't remember which one. The game is out of my brain because that's how bad it was. It was terrible. The battle of mid. Fucking Russell Wilson versus Matt Ryan. But Jerry Jeudy is really... Just got to see it at the NFL level. Next year, there's a guy that could be a unanimous, like top 15 wide receiver pick in fantasy. Number 23, my guy, talked about him in the league winners video from a couple days ago. Wiki, DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. Underdog ADP wide receiver 26 at pick 47.8. He was the wide receiver 24 in PPR and 33 in PPR points per game last year, tied with Watson, Lazard, and Mecole Hardman in Carolina. 17 games played last year, 21st in targets, 37th in receptions, 26th in receiving yards, 14th in total touchdowns, 97th in target accuracy. DJ Moore has been someone throughout his whole career that has been just destroyed by the quarterback position. He had Cam Newton when Cam Newton wasn't super Cam. Wasn't hitting the fucking dab in the end zone, right? He wasn't that Cam Newton. He had PJ Walker, had Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. He's had literal dog shit at the quarterback position. That's why he hasn't hit his peak. A lot of talk in training camp. Justin Fields himself. Justin Fields says everything's been better since DJ Moore's been there. I know. DJ Moore is just like, not DJ Moore. Justin Fields is just like Jalen Hurts. Get on him. He's not a great passer. He's not this. He's not that. Again, Justin Fields in college was slicing defenses up O.J. Simpson style. But at the NFL level, he hasn't really been cooking like that. I think he has the upside to do so. I think DJ Moore just needs someone that isn't a useless pile of dog shit. Be great. And I truly think that is what we have here with Fields. He was 5th in Dominator rating, DJ Moore. I'm a big fan. I've always have been. I think this is the year where the Rubik's Cube finally aligns here. DJ Moore for 24. And I'm not talking about like peeling this shit off. I'm talking about actually solving that. Yes. Terry McLaurin, left hand up. Who are we? The Commanders. Underdog ADP wide receiver 23, pick 43.9. Terry McLaurin, another guy that has been terrorized by the quarterback position. I know Sam Howell is not the best, but I think Bieniemy is going to help them. I love Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 14 in PPR last year, 23 in PPR points per game, tied with Michael Pittman. 17 games played in 2022. McLaurin was 19th in targets, 21st in receptions, 9th in receiving yards, and 29th in touchdowns. Again, bad quarterback play. 61st in target accuracy, 7th in yards per target, 11th in yards per reception. McLaurin is a very safe pick because even if everything goes downhill, they have bad quarterback play again. McLaurin's probably going to finish as wide receiver 25-ish, 24, 23, that range. But if everything goes right, he has the upside to be much better. Again, another guy that just the quarterbacks have fucked him over. We all know how good McLaurin is. We all know how good he can be. Just suppressed by the quarterback. Let's hope that Sam Howell is just good and McLaurin can be great. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that like button down below as well to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Again, please make sure you guys check out Underdog Fantasy, link in the video description, or use promo code Notorious for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great guys' day. And as always, good boy.